Hello and welcome back to Historical Humans Reacts. Today we're back looking at r/archaeology and seeing a couple of posts that popped up, and we noticed a trend amongst a couple of the posts, so we're going to actually just talk about those specifically. A lot of them have to do with advice and education, and I think the perfect way to jump right into it is to go right into the one I got pulled up here on the screen. Do I need to get a master's? I'm looking into various grad schools, and one program states on their website that their MA path is mainly for those who wish to do applied work, and that you don't need an MA to move on to a PhD. The main thing I want to do in this field is NAGPRA type repatriation work, and from what jobs I find online, I probably need to just get a master's.
Uh, I will say right away, yes, you are probably going to need a master's. Well, you can jump straight into the PhD track. PhDs are not necessary for the vast majority of jobs out there as archaeologists. There,
Unless you're in academia, pretty much no job will require a PhD. Some will say recommended, but if you have enough experience or relevant experience towards that field, a master's is fully sufficient.
yeah. Work experience with a master's counts almost for more than a PhD a lot of the times in this field, especially with what this poster seems to want to do, which is repatriation work. Applied field work tends to work a lot with repatriation. You tend to come across a lot of the things that would need to be repatriated by doing applied field work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, such as just most obviously, you're investigating a site in applied work and you come across, Native American remains
Yeah.
that need to be documented and repatriated, and you are with a lot of repatriation, a lot of applied work, you are by definition upholding NAGPRA.
Which, for those who don't know, NAGPRA is a federal law that was passed in 1990 that required the repatriation, the return of indigenous remains that were held by institutions and repositories. Basically, a lot of the indigenous communities in the United States wanted to repatriate their remains and wanted to rebury them, and they felt like all the scientific research that was being done to them desecrated the bodies in a way and just wasn't a proper way for the remains to be stored. So they fought very hard to change federal law, and this was the end result. And now human remains that are encountered during archaeology or during construction are returned to the tribes that are most closely associated with the remains.
Yes. I would say for this person, definitely go get your master's and then look for work in either a cultural resource management company or your state's what I'm blanking on the word on the term.
The SHPO office.
Your state's historic preservation office, because
Yes.
those will be the places that will primarily deal with repatriation, either uh, as a side effect of upholding NAGPRA performing cultural resource management, or as your direct and explicit purpose in a state historic preservation office.
And this post also brings up something that's pretty neat is there are master's programs that are terminal masters, so they end at the master's degree. And if you get it in applied archaeology or in cultural resource management, it pretty much unlocks any CRM type jobs for you, and you could work in the public sector. You could work for state agencies. You could work for state historic preservation offices. You can work private. You could work for telecommunications companies, road companies, construction, engineering. They all have cultural resource staffs on staff, or even the federal government. In the United States, most land managing agencies actually have on staff permanent archaeologists. So there's a lot of jobs there. And I know the Army Corps of Engineer, I did a field survey with them, and we encountered some human remains. And they actually had a programmatic agreement in place that repatriated all the remains to the tribe that they were associated with. They just automatically would put them through the process. There'd be no hiccups, no roadblocks.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I would definitely say for someone in the United States, as this person obviously is, to look for a terminal master's program with a specialization in either historic or prehistoric archaeology, just because that is what you're going to see a lot more of, and you're going to be able to have that specialization going into the field to work with either uh, historic or prehistoric materials. A lot of places tend to like that, and that tends to mean that the program you're in is going to focus more on archaeology within the United States.
But I think that's a good point to pivot to the second post here, which is archaeology undergrad about to graduate. Help.
Yeah. Yeah, so this person, in this case, is someone who has taken a archaeology laden coursework for their undergrad and wants to go into maritime archaeology, but doesn't really seem to know what exactly they want to do, or even where they want to go with it. And you can go, Justin. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I was just going to say they're worried about trying to find the right topic to research for their thesis and to write a thesis. And they're not sure if that's quite the route they want to go, which is it's a valid thing, trying to specialize in a highly specific field, one that requires a lot of a more diverse skill set, but then also not sure about jobs. I mean, he,
The
whoever it is,
poster.
the original poster, they could get a job doing maritime archaeology. Some do only require a bachelor's, but some positions do require a master's. I know when I worked at the Wisconsin Historical Society, we had an arm that had on staff maritime archaeologists, and they actually were in the news probably 3 or 4 months ago. They pulled a 3,000-year-old canoe out of one of the lakes in Madison
Mm-hmm.
after one of the archaeologists was scuba diving and just happened to stumble across it.
Yeah, I would definitely say for this person, you are doing very good right now as far as thinking of like a master's or a thesis if you were to go that route, because you already know what specific subfield you want in archaeology. You want maritime archaeology, so you can weed out programs that don't focus on that. You can look at you can look for places that would specifically focus on maritime archaeology. And to help narrow your search further, what I would recommend is pairing the type of archaeology you want to do with a culture or region that you are already interested in. Like if you are interested in the Portuguese, or if you are interested in Indonesia, that would be a good place to start looking at programs and interests and things that might help you develop that thesis into something you feel comfortable applying to a master's program with.
I also highly suggest reaching out to professors of programs of maritime and looking at what their research interests are, what they study, what area, what regions, because from there you can get in touch with the professors and meet with them and discuss your interest in the field. You don't need to know specifically what your thesis is going to be about going into it, especially because it's going to change and it's going to become something completely different from what you originally thought it would be. And that's kind of the beauty of the whole thing, is just seeing that progression, seeing it change. But if you go in with the baseline, it allows you to, it gives you a leg up in the process. It gives you that advantage of knowing what direction you're already working towards versus trying to figure that out along the way.
Yeah, and like if you compare your interest in this specific field of archaeology with an interest in a culture or a region or a time period, you can talk to these professors, and I guarantee you will find one who is just as enthusiastic as you are about about the topic and about the people, place, or time.
That's how I got into grad school. I reached out to my grad advisor and just I gave her a rundown of what I wanted my thesis to be about, and it shared a lot of similar research interests to what she had been working on. So it gave me almost an advantage going into it because we already had been spitballing ideas. We had already been talking about how I wanted to do things, and granted, stuff got changed around and switched around thanks to the big bad cold.
The the world existing.
Yeah, but that's just the natural progression of things. It still it becomes a competitive advantage in that regard, and the fact that this person lives in Florida allows them a massive advantage because Florida has so many maritime resources. They have over 1,000 miles of coastline. They have hundreds of thousands of lakes and rivers and bayou.
Yep. Direct access to the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico.
The Bermuda Triangle.
Yep. Oh yeah, that lovely thing. Yep. And I would say don't worry if you don't have your idea as clear cut as Justin did. My I had I had a general time period and a general set of cultures that I wanted to look at when I applied, and I was able to get in, and I'm doing pretty well for myself so far.
Definitely. Yeah, it's just it becomes a small advantage, but as long as you have some general guidance, I think you'll be all right. Like you don't have to have everything figured out.
Yeah. And as to the last part of this, he's the poster is also asking about jobs and things that they can do in the interim while they're finding themselves and thinking about what they want. Uh, so it's we can talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, so like I said, a lot of state agencies have maritime programs. You just have to look for an air. I think pretty much every state um, in the United States should have some level of maritime because you have lakes and rivers and oceans and coastlines and a lot of areas where there can be maritime resources. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
us being from the Chicagoland area, there's thousands of shipwrecks in the Great Lakes. It is an absolute gold mine.
It's a little treasure trove up there. Not to mention the other side of Illinois has that nice big river running down it that uh, makes for some fun stuff too. Additionally, I would also recommend looking at museums and museum type positions. Not necessarily anything big, just basic entry level visitor service type things. As that would be a good place where you can make a little money, be surrounded by archaeology, by history, and you have immediate and regular access to an entire collection of artifacts and information to help you look at. Oh, hey, this might be something I'm interested in. I wonder if that'll pair well with my maritime archaeology,
That's
because
actually
it's
a
a good way
really
to
good
find
point.
a good way to find ideas to sort of bring the two problems that this poster has together. Is you know you go to museums, you can get a job at a museum, give you a little bit of money while you figure yourself out, and give you ideas for what you might want.
And also, if you're looking at internships or volunteering, why don't you look at multiple maritime archaeology field schools? There are literally
Mhm.
field schools out there that will teach you maritime, and maybe you look at different regions, areas that you may not have seen before. I mean, you're just a Google search away from finding a bunch
Yep.
of different programs that are offered
Mhm.
that may give you an insight or may help you find what topic you want to do. And even so, it might help you just network and find people who are also in that field who can maybe help you get a job. I mean, archaeology is a very, very small field, and
Mhm.
networking is probably the second most important thing to your education.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think that's a good point to jump over to our third and final article for this episode. So archaeology, but not as a career. This is our third and final article here. This is a post by someone who wants to go back to get their bachelor's in archaeology, and they want to find a way to do archaeology, but not as a full time job. And they're looking for opportunities as to how they might do that.
Imagine having a well-paying job that you can do archaeology as a hobby.
It's called the 19th century, Justin.
I mean, again, like I mentioned with the last one, look for field schools, look for international ones. You want to travel, you want it to be a vacation. Apply to that field school in Italy, apply to that field school in the UK. Most field schools
Yep.
run usually about 6 to 8 weeks. So, I mean, that's about half of your vacation time there. So, you'll have plenty of time to explore. And
Yeah. Yeah. Additional to field schools in which you are, of course, paying to do this. Since this poster is claiming someone who has a degree that has some focus on archaeology that they're doing. You could also be qualified to do what is known as shovel bumps,
Yeah.
where you join on with an archaeological dig or a project that's only set to last a few weeks. You drive out to wherever the project is, you show up, you perform whatever survey or excavation is required. You get paid a little bit of money, and you go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pay is usually enough to sustain you through the length of the project, and probably not too much more.
Yeah, not the best paying, but that is a really solid alternative. Mine would be more like the leisure, wanting to experience it, get to see a little bit more of a refined excavation type setting. Yours, on the other hand, is smart. You're making extra money. You're profiting while you're doing it,
Yeah,
getting
this
that.
project is the yeah. It's a question of how leisurely do you want to be about it, and about how much money are you setting aside for your vacation. This poster, I think they mentioned they have a well-paying job, so I assume money is not going to be an object for them to spend a couple grand on doing this as their vacation. But if that seems a bit too pricey to you, and you want to do this as as sort of a side hustle, then the summers are full of archaeological projects. They're only going to last a few weeks, and you can make them your vacation, your side hustle, just hopping between them. A lot of people do this. It's not a bad life, but you know, well, it keeps you alive. We'll say that.
It's, I will say, as someone who did a lot of shovel bumming and field work, it's very fun to be able to go to these different projects, and you go to places you'll never experience again. You'll get to see things you don't know what happens every day. You don't know what you're going to come across or what you're going to find. It's very monotonous in terms of shovel testing and digging, but it's very fulfilling. I really enjoyed it. And then the poster here also made a comment about wanting to work in a museum, and that could potentially be another alternative. A lot of museums, a lot of parks, they have seasonal jobs during the summer to work as an intern, to work, handling crowds with public days, that kind of thing. You could go that route to begin with and just use that as a catapult for your second career.
Yeah, because if you continue to volunteer consistently at a single place, so the people there will inevitably get to know you a little bit more, and that might lead to a better part-time gig where you show up there for this as part of the summer help, but you're less crowd control and something a bit more specialized, especially if you are knowledgeable and educated in the field in which these museums and parks and other places are focused on.
And especially because the poster talks about how they're more interested in reconstruction and in cleaning artifacts. I mean, a seasonal museum job would probably be ideal. You'd get firsthand experience working with the artifacts. You'll get to learn from the experts in the field. You'll be able to pick their brains. And to be honest, I think that's a good way for them to eventually get their masters, which they talk about um, as a way to specialize. Is, like you said, experience the artifacts, get to explore all the different resources at your fingertips, and from there you can whittle down your options and your ideas.
Yeah,
But
and I think that's a wrap.
yeah, I think that hits pretty much all of that. If you guys enjoyed watching another archaeology reacts video to r/archaeology, be sure to drop a like down below and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. We'll see you guys next week.